Welcome to the Story of the Week podcast. This is a supplemental podcast to the supplemental podcast that goes along with the weekday morning newscast we call Things You Might Have Heard, produced by The Conversation Project and all a part of the More Better Media umbrella. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne, and this podcast will go into a deep dive into one of the top 10 stories that we produced and we told you about for the engagement for this week in our headlines we post on Facebook and Twitter. This week was dominated by stories that included Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh, also Bills linebacker Von Miller, and Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Almost got it that time. But the story we're expanding on is this headline: Arkansas finalizing deal to bring back ex-head coach Bobby Petrino as offensive coordinator. This story was number 3 ranked this week in what we posted, or what you engaged in, and posted on Tuesday, November the 28th. And before we get into the full commentary, quick reminder that you should stop by our website, theconversationproject.com, and get all the details on what and why is how we do this thing daily in news and conversational topics, including how we got to this topic in this headline here. So, for the week ending December the 2nd, 2023, let's get into the story of the week. We have a long, sort of detailed history with Bobby Petrino. I, myself, was working in radio, working as a sports director, or director of a sports news station, and dealing with news stories for Arkansas at the time, because everything was all about Arkansas sports. So with that, we can go through a pretty detailed background of Bobby Petrino to get to why he's such a pain in my butt right now for this story, and why it shouldn't matter, but it does. The story of Bobby Petrino is important, the backstory is, so let's go into how we got to him being a good coach, a great coach, and a coach no one can trust. Petrino's first big head coaching job came from Louisville. People remember that. He brought the Cardinals to great heights as the head coach, had to get there first, doing the rounds as all coaches do, and then ending up working for John L. Smith, who moved to Louisville in 1998. Petrino followed along as the offensive coordinator for one season. In that season, Cardinals were top ranked in Division 1A in scoring and total offense, posted the biggest positive turnaround among 1A football teams, and winning 6 more games than it did in the season prior. He went from that collegiate job to work as assistant coach for 3 years in the NFL, getting some experience. He came back to Louisville to take over from his old boss. John L. Smith left, and Louisville came in, and Petrino did his work there, turning that team into a national powerhouse. From 2003 to 2006, they got a chance to be invited to the Orange Bowl, which was their second major bowl appearance in school history at that point in time. And then with talent like that, you want to keep a guy around. So on July 13, 2006, Petrino signed. He signed a 10-year contract with the Cardinals of Louisville, worth $25.6 million to stay as head football coach at Louisville for 10 years. 6 months later, he accepted a head coaching position for the Atlanta Falcons. That was a 5-year contract worth $24 million. So more money over a shorter period of time. Yeah. But of course, that means he broke the trust and the contract he had literally signed 6 months earlier. Keep that in mind. We're coming back to that. That's going to come back to haunt him and us again. So what happened in Atlanta? Here's the thing. Petrino was this heavy offense guy, and he was there to bring in developing star quarterback Michael Vick. You may remember that guy. He had all the tools and was one of the first premier people in the black quarterback era, if you will, who could run, who could throw, who could actually do it all at the same time. So he had that big banner to work with. The problem was Vick was on trial for the whole dog fighting thing that happened in Virginia and couldn't actually leave Virginia to go play football. In fact, eventually he had to go do some jail time. So what Petrino was left with were okay quarterbacks, but backups. Joey Harrington, Byron Leftwich, and Chris Redman. Joey Harrington, of course, had a lot of stellar things coming out of college, and Leftwich and Redman, not bad quarterbacks, but weren't the franchise guys that he was there to train up. So what happened in Atlanta? Not a lot of good, at least the way the scores went. So Petrino resigned as head coach of the Falcons in December 10 of 2007. So that's not quite a full year. But here's the thing. 24 hours after promising owner Arthur Blank he would stay in Atlanta. So he's breaking a contract again. While this is going on, Petrino's actually working behind the scenes to kind of get a gig. So it's there. But the big real key thing that people really got to hang up on, not the fact that he lied to the owner saying he was going to be there. He left a 4-sentence laminated note at the locker of each player, basically saying, "I'm sorry, I'm out, peace, be great." So once the resignation was there, he had a chance to actually talk officially with AD for Arkansas, Jeff Long. Negotiated a contract that would have Petrino being paid $2.85 million a year for 5 years. Not a bad contract, especially since he was just sneaking away from another contract someplace other. It later got extended to 7 years by the time he actually signed it, but remember, this negotiation was not even legal to do until he had actually resigned from being with the Falcons, which he told the owner of the Falcons he wasn't going anywhere, then resigned, then did the quick thing here. So, almost. I'm personally a bit upset because I'm a semi-Falcons fan and a Michael Vick fan, and I'm kind of pissed about that. But he comes to Arkansas. I'm still getting into the Arkansas groove, so it's not really my team. But he comes and initially brings the wood, and things get better for Arkansas immediately. TV time for Arkansas football, it's massive, and people are actually shouting out some of the players he has going on and some of the things he's doing, including giving a lot of hype to Ryan Mallett, who would later go on to play in the NFL. He recently passed away, and that's a sad story there. But he did have his spotlight in Boston. Didn't quite work so well in the Patriots, and then kind of played back up there. But coming out of college, was able to raise up his platform and show that he had the thing to get the quarterbacks a bit of a say. In 2009, the Razorbacks almost upset number 1 Florida on October 17th. In 2010, they finished 10-2 and got their first major bowl appearance in 2 decades, taking on Ohio State. In 2012, they won the Cotton Bowl Classic in Dallas. They beat Kansas State 29-16. They came out that season with an 11-2 record. Only losses, Alabama and LSU. 2 natural rivals who are always competing for national championships. So that was okay this year. And then, Petrino was involved in a motorcycle accident, a crash, in April of 2012. And it got really weird after that. You saw the pictures, you've seen the headlines, all the crazy stuff. He had the neck brace on, or he was riding a motorcycle, got in some patch of something, and just had to kind of drop it, and then got himself hurt. What we found out was he wasn't riding by himself, so he couldn't just jump off the motorcycle. He had on the back of his motorcycle a woman named Jessica Durrell. Jessica Durrell was a former volleyball player who was dating Bobby Petrino, even though he was married. The volleyball player graduated and took on a job with the Razorbacks and the football team as a student liaison, essentially making sure they got their work done, and continued the relationship with Bobby Petrino while he was still married. He was put on indefinite leave while they did the investigation. Basically found out what happened. He dropped the motorcycle, hurt himself because he didn't want anyone to find out that he was not by himself on this cycle. And then he was fired for cause, essentially being a bad dude and hiring someone who really wasn't actually qualified and other general dumbness. The problem was they were winning. They were winning. Arkansas was winning. And so the fan base was a bit upset that, one little bad act, one little dumb decision, just one little thing, riding around with his girlfriend on a motorcycle, and he did what he could to save her. That's kind of became the thing. Here's where a slight pause into the downfall, but the eventual comeback came where he got a contract for Western Kentucky, only making $850,000 a year. So, and a really, really, really huge buyout contract if he left. So, because people are used to him leaving early. But only one season at WKU. He had the Hilltoppers in the second straight win over Kentucky, finished 8-4, did not make a bowl game, so there was that. He did some other back and forth and here and there's and doing what he can to get into bigger programs because you eventually do that. Eventually, you hire guys with bad character because they win football games, which is what happens. Which is what happened actually at Louisville, because the University of Louisville decided to bring back Petrino in 2015. There was rumors of going back and forth for who to hire after a pretty big blow up at 2014, and it was kind of, when they heard it was Petrino, people kind of got weirded out. Then he realized he won a bunch of football games, and he'd have a chance to coach a guy named Lamar Jackson, who's doing a pretty good job in the NFL right now, and he got him there essentially. So from 2015 to 2017, Lamar Jackson basically tore up the track at Louisville and won a Heisman Trophy while there in 2016. Unfortunately, when he left, the magic sort of left, and so did Petrino again. So Petrino's been floating around back and forth for a bit, and now let's get to Arkansas right now. Since Petrino left, Arkansas has not had a winning season of note. In fact, they actually hired John L. Smith for a while, who had to leave because, he had cancer and people were kind of dogging him for not winning football games. Then they found out he was sick and everybody felt really, really dumb and bad about that one. But the current head coach at Arkansas, a man named Sam Pittman, who people are so happy to see because after a couple of different guys went through with some bad character things and just weren't winning, he was just sort of the Arkansas guy. Lovable, huggable, big guy, liked big offense, liked big defense, and just liked to play hard smash football. And he needed some time to get his players in, and he got his players in. And he needed some time to kind of make the people understand what's going on, and he did that with time. And it turns out that the reality is Arkansas is just not very good at football. A lot of that is because they're not recruiting well, they're not pulling the right players, and they keep having to play teams like Alabama and LSU every year. It just is what it is. So, with all the rumors and innuendo about getting rid of Sam Pittman, the guy everybody loved, but isn't winning football games, we get word that Bobby Petrino has a contract offer up to be the offensive coordinator. Offense is what Petrino does. That means if Petrino is running the offense, they should be scoring more points. You score more points than the other team does, that's how you win, and that would be a win for Arkansas. First, there were about a day and a half of the talk back and forth. Then it turned into essentially a contract being signed as the Twitterverse, or the Xverse, if you will, was going back and forth with its, pictures of Bob Petrino from the old motorcycle accident and reminding folks of what we got into the last time. And then there were people saying, but he was winning when we were here the last time, so we're okay with that. And that's where we're basically getting to, after all that exposition, where the actual commentary comes. Because Bobby Petrino is now the offensive coordinator for Arkansas. He's going to get a good chunk of money. He's going to make some pretty good money for that job. But he's not the head coach, which is, I think, what people would actually like to see. Because that would make him in charge of the entire thing and not just being in charge of the offense. Here's one of the things that's extremely fickle about college football fans. And it's not the same with your regular fans for the NFL, because you'll pay big money for those guys and then you'll probably talk about how bad they suck and just go with it until they're good again. If your home team, your college home team is not winning, it really is like a national tragedy going on in your heart. The whole state goes with it. And a state like Arkansas has one major team. They have lots of colleges, obviously, and lots of people to play them, but they don't have 2 or 3 large schools to battle back and forth. You are an Arkansas fan just by birth. You may want to like another fan base going somewhere else. And yes, various other fan bases will like their actual state team to play Arkansas and get that money that they pay to the other small schools that they beat up. But that's not how it works. Arkansans are Arkansas fans. They may not be able to pull a map out and figure out where Fayetteville is, but they know that the University of Arkansas is the capital of all things. It's actually Little Rock, but that's beside the point. Bobby Petrino as the head coach for the Razorbacks would be a big get for everyone, and people would love it, despite the fact that he was fired many, many, many years ago for bad conduct, being a bad person. He had an affair, and he was hiding the affair, and essentially was fired because he hired an affair. If we'd found out about the whole tryst without the motorcycle accident, he probably would have just gotten divorced, had a big settlement, and would still be coaching major college programs without any dips. In fact, he'd probably still be the Razorbacks coach right now on a tenure that you could say would rival something like Nick Saban. He just need to keep winning games and get close to national championship games. This is what the Arkansas Razorback fan base believes they'll get from the new Bobby Petrino. The problem is, Sam Pittman's still playing with his guys, not necessarily Bobby Petrino's guys. So will Petrino, not being the head coach, have a chance to pull in the right players to make things work out? Let's ask Houston Nutt and Gus Malzahn how that worked out for them. In the meantime, we do have Bobby Petrino back to kick around again in college football, though he technically wasn't gone, and in Arkansas football. Now, Arkansas not quite being laughing stock, but being really, really close as they've been underperforming, underachieving, and just not being very good for the last couple of years, now has a bigger chip on their shoulder because now they've got the bad guy with the black hat on their team. They pulled in the anti-hero, and they're going to have to do what they can to win over the hearts and minds of the nation in their playing, but not in the actual fan base, who particularly are a little upset we lost the coach in the first place because he was winning football games, even if it was cheating on his wife. Now, yes, the whole tryst with the affair has little to do with his football ability, or a lot based on how you look at that. But the whole thing came down to the fact that Bobby Petrino, that man, has a history of lying to people, lying to bosses, signing contracts and leaving early, and of course, in Atlanta, sneaking out like a thief in the night, although there was negotiations working on the back end so he could sneak out fairly easily. It is how it is. It works how it works. Now, the original concept of this actual commentary was to throw in some Jim Harbaugh on how he didn't coach Michigan last week and is getting $500,000 as bonus. Plus, he's probably going back to NFL. We're not going to jump into that because the Petrino thing really, really hits me hard. And I'm not sure exactly why. It shouldn't. I should not care. I should take this as an X's and O's thing. I should take this as strictly on the stats and talk about how Petrino was a winning coach. He had his thing that got him fired. He did the rehab stuff, which I will say he did the rehab stuff. And now he's getting a shot on a lesser role to bring Arkansas back to some level of prominence that was last seen when he left. So good luck on that, I should be saying. The reality is we do have a lot of jerks, a lot of evil people, a lot of just deeply flawed men, mostly men. There's women too. Trust me, we're looking at you, LSU, and your women's basketball team. People who are coaching, training our young men and women, young minds, whatever. And let's even not even go there, I should say, because we know that these kids, because they're young, are not there to be kids and learn anything particular. They're there to try to show off so they can get to the next level. Let's get that straight. They want to go play big time football, big time pay, and the way the coaches run the programs, indentured servitude is a slightly less evil way to put it. But when we have guys that are just so blatantly obviously bad and have been blatantly obviously bad, and I can't say I know Bobby Petrino's heart and his mind and where he's gone to and what he's done for any mea culpas against the entire world. I just know we literally have like reams and reams of data on him being bad at, being bad, not keeping up with any sort of contracts, not keeping his word, which is supposed to be what we're looking at. His word's supposed to be his bond, and that's what we're looking at. Now, if he wins football games, no one will care about his word because he's winning football games. And because of his past, there'll be a lot of, that happened 10 years ago, and we're just not going to deal with that. But literally 10 years ago, we were dealing with this. And now we'll see what we're dealing with next season. Now, if the state is dealing with this with a package for accommodations at the Cotton Bowl next season, I'm sure that the fan base won't have much issue with what's going down. And that has been the Story of the Week podcast for this week. This is for the week ending December the 2nd, 2023. Thank you so much for being with us for all the things we produce for the Conversation Project and More Bitter Media, by the way, and for this Story of the Week. Now, we do understand that because of the nature of the stories that are picked, nature of the stories that you actually jump into, and last week was an overabundance of football, so we had a lot of football to pick from, the consistency of the topics does get a little bit weird. We go politics, we go pop culture, we go football, we go bouncing back and forth. This is a podcast and this is a headline chaser that is based on the headlines you want to chase. So that's how this works out. You follow us on our feeds on Facebook and Twitter and let us know what stories to talk about daily and weekly. And from there, we know what we're talking about in this expanded version here. Go to facebook.com/thisisconversationproject or Twitter or x.com/th_conversation and follow the feeds. We post news stories every 50 minutes for you to engage in. The more engaging they get, the more chance we have of chatting on them. Now, go to our main website, thisisconversationproject.com, and see how you can do more with the feeds and find more about what we do every single day. Also, consider visiting our sponsors page and our partnerships page and helping us do more stuff with the show here. With that, we're wrapping things up officially for this week, reminding you to stay limber, stay hydrated, and stay on task for all the grand things you are here to do. We want to make sure that you are keeping your life going as long as possible, doing nothing to prematurely end it, so don't do anything stupid. Make sure you're focused. And what story we'll be yakking up next week, we won't know. We have to deal with our daily show to see an idea how things are going. The weekly wrap-up tells us what top 10 stories are there, and from there, we shall choose one story of the week. Till then, thank you